It is Hump Day here. Another episode of What the Truck, October 29th. Y'all, we made it halfway through the week. I'm your host, Malcolm Harris. It is so good to see each and every single one of you. Y'all, we've had a jam-packed October. Newsletter is coming in a very short amount of time to highlight that, but it is going to be a last 2 days of October, and we got a jam-packed show. Looking at the on deck and what's here for us, kicking off on deck is going to be Clayton Griffin. He is the president at OTR Solutions. He's going to be talking with me about broker relationship decisions and how it impacts carrier stability, reliability, and long-term growth. And then also my hallway buddy, my man, the myth, the legend, the one who's making the moves, Simon Steadman. He is representing Supermove. He's going to be talking about an event that they're having as well as what's currently happening in the market. Super excited to have Simon on board. Super excited for Clayton Griffin to be on board. And y'all know that we cannot do this show without, of course, headlines, which are going to come up very, very soon, and our sponsor, Descartes MacroPoint.
Trusted by shippers and preferred by brokers, Descartes MacroPoint is the industry's best transportation, visibility, and risk monitoring platform. Deliver confidence with real-time insights and automated alerts to keep freight moving and your customers informed. Less risk, more connectivity. That's Descartes MacroPoint. Visibility you can trust.
Every load matters when it comes to your reputation. That's why the world's top companies rely on Descartes MacroPoint for visibility and risk monitoring. Keep customers confident, freight moving, and operations in sync. Descartes MacroPoint, visibility that you can trust. Y'all, if you have been under a rock, you have sadly missed out on some of the best stuff that has happened on the show, I think, since I've been on. There was a rant that we're going to get to in a second, but there's an article that was dropped from Craig Fuller today talking about the ATA and how it's caved on its stance on driver shortages, right? And essentially, it's a hard pivot saying that it's quality, right? There has been no apologies made. And for what's happening, they're essentially painting the picture that is showing that this is not entirely accurate. If you guys see this clip right here, it's a backpedal, right? And what to me is noticeable is that there are quality drivers in the space, right? I want you guys, again, if you've been under a rock and you have not seen what the content about the ATA has been on this show this week, I'm sadly mistaken because I'm not going to let that fly. I want Craig and this clip to fly so you guys can get it from the source. Y'all, roll this clip for me.
They will not come out publicly because they're afraid of the repercussions of this. Someone described it as the mafia. They get phone calls from their peers that they come out and say anything. And even the largest, quote unquote mega carriers that we think about, and I'm not talking one, I'm talking multiple of them, will tell you that they're incredibly distressed by what's happened to the trucking industry, is that we have allowed so many companies and so many participants that do not follow the rules. It's that this inadvertent telling people we have a truck driver shortage drove every policy decision, because you see it when Congress goes up and says, hey, we're changing this law that makes it easier. They always mention the truck driver shortage as the primary reason. But because they hang on to this lie that is clearly not in the data, and they continue to double down on it, despite what the data says, has done a travesty to our industry, and they should be held accountable. And so I think the ATA needs to be held accountable. I think the carriers need to stop pretending that there's a truck driver shortage. And I think this is a moment for Chris Spear at the ATA to declare victory on the truck driver shortage and say, we've solved it, and now let's fire the really bad actors. Let's get rid of the unsafe carriers. Let's get rid of these unscrupulous carriers that drive 20 hours a day and don't respect the hours of service. Let's get rid of temporary work visa people that come over on temporary guest visas for 90 days and drive trucks with no training. Let's stop the madness. 100%. And it's really comes down to the ATA accepting responsibility for their actions.
Guys, Craig is not wrong, right? I'm just going to flat out say it. He's not wrong. We have several tweets that I want to show, right? If you guys could get those ready for me. Looking at Sir Damon Eric, right? You have a lot of good American drivers that are up to American standards and hauling freight, but unfortunately, they have to compete with crappy, illegal alien drivers who will haul the freight cheap and break the law doing so. Until this is rectified, nothing will change. Listen, I'm not saying he's correct, but he absolutely is. There's another one from Shiv right here. I believe the real reason they are backpedaling is that the ATA knows if enough people oppose it, it can lead to an existential crisis for them because the major supporters would just find another lobbying group or create a new 3-letter lobbying organization with a better industry image. Y'all, keep them coming. Weird. According to Bob, this is from Super Trucker. Shout out to Super Trucker, man. You know your stuff. Weird. According to Bob, we were supposed to have over 100,000 drivers short by now. How do I get paid as much as he does to be wrong time and time again? And then finally, there's another one I really wanted you guys to check out. Y'all, the only way out is to erase capacity. This is from chief economist, of course, with ATA, Bob. And I'll make you a deal, Bob. I will erase every single negative tweet I have ever about the ATA if you guys work with ICE to flush out the bad actors, right? So the good carriers can flourish. And there's also another tweet from Craig, I believe you got, well, excuse me, before that, we had this one from Desiree. They did the same thing in 2009, following, of course, investigative series on the truck driver training. Suddenly, they said that there was a glut of truck drivers and not enough qualified ones. All right, they just wait. I'm so sorry, guys. And then finally, there's this one from Craig. After getting roasted on the state of trucking in recent weeks, the ATA is backpedaling and has redefined its definition of a truck driver shortage. As their management conference today, it's about quality and not quantity. I'm going to tell you guys, like, from my seat, right? I don't want to speak for Craig. I don't want to speak for others. Before, I actually go into this, I want you guys to listen to this video right now because it's going to kind of speak to where we're at right now. You guys roll the clip.
They will not come out publicly because they're afraid of the repercussions of this. Someone described it as the mafia. They get phone calls from their peers that they come out and say anything. And even the largest, quote unquote mega carriers that we think about, and I'm not talking one, I'm talking multiple of them, will tell you that they're incredibly distressed by what's happened to the trucking industry. Is that we have allowed so many companies and so many participants that do not follow the rules. It's that this inadvertent telling people we have a truck driver shortage drove every policy decision, because you see it when Congress goes up and says, hey, we're changing this law that makes it easier. They always mention the truck driver shortage as the primary reason. But because they hang on to this lie that is clearly not in the data, and they continue to double down on it, despite what the data says, has done a travesty to our industry, and they should be held accountable. And so I think the ATA needs to be held accountable. I think the carriers need to stop pretending that there's a truck driver shortage. And I think this is a moment for Chris Spear at the ATA to declare victory on the truck driver shortage and say, we've solved it, and now let's fire the really bad actors. Let's get rid of the unsafe carriers. Let's get rid of these unscrupulous carriers that drive 20 hours a day and don't respect the hours of service. Let's get rid of temporary work visa people that come over on temporary guest visas for 90 days and drive trucks with no training. Let's stop the madness. 100%. And it's really comes down to the ATA accepting responsibility for their actions.
Point blank period, folks. All right. Craig said it on Monday. I'm going to double down and say it again. When it comes to this and what's currently happening, we in this space have to hold the ATA accountable for their actions and rectify what is currently going on. Because I'm telling you, from a broker's perspective, and again, I've done the job time in and time out. I understand trying to make a few bucks here and there and not properly vetting when it comes to certain carriers that you're utilizing. But to me personally, is it really worth the relationship with your customer when something goes south and that shipment doesn't deliver properly, right? Of course, this statement that I want to move on to is this next story. I could talk about this all day, and I got fired up, and I'm sorry, but I really wanted you guys to understand and know this. Looking at this next story, right? It's about non-domiciled CDL emergency ruling. It could cause this capacity crunch, and I want to look at this again from Secretary Duffy, because it is, again, something that is really here. It's really prevalent as we speak. Carriers aren't again, fully compliant. This could sideline them, reducing the available trucks in key lanes. The advice that I have for you guys is simple. Get ahead of this now. Verify carrier compliance. Every single organization that has carrier compliance within its walls, they need to be strengthening relationships with those that are ready to operate properly, right? This is how you protect your lanes. This is how you protect your shipments. This is how, most importantly, you protect relationships, right? So yes, a capacity crunch is likely. That's common knowledge, but also making sure that there is quality, right, when it comes to this is key. And that all has to deal with compliance and properly vetting and doing the work so that this does not happen, because it's currently happening every single day when it comes to carriers not being properly placed within our space. So, shifting gears now, because we have talked about that a lot, and we're going to continue to, right? I'm always going to bring you news that is relevant and that I think is substantial in this space. And definitely, like I said, for more on that topic from the ACA and all things when it comes to that, make sure you're looking at FreightWaves.com. That piece from Craig just dropped, as well as on social media platforms at Freight Alley for the latest when it comes to that too. Let's shift gears right now to ocean, right? Because ocean freight rates are climbing double digits as the US and Asia trade ramps up, right? This isn't just an international problem. There's a ripple effect when it comes to operations. Yes, higher vessel costs, they're going to mean lighter margins, pressure on dredge and yard operations, and stress across broker and carrier networks. So the smart move, again, building visibility into every touch point, leveraging data for negotiation, and exploring the routing and, just strategies for when these spikes come, right? So there's going to be more on this, again, on freightwaves.com. I thought that this was something that you guys definitely need to be on the loop and in the loop about, rather, when it comes to the actual market internationally. I've actually been to this place that we're going to discuss next, and it is in France. And of course, it is about the heist that happened. If you guys want to show this lovely picture, look at that, man. The Mona Lisa lives here. The Louvre heist teaches us about freight fraud and cargo theft. Y'all, sophisticated theft is everywhere, right? We always talk about cargo theft. It is constantly going to be a theme on the show. For this is just showing, again, gaps in visibility and weak chain of custody, creating opportunities for criminals, right? In this, it kind of delivers each and every single way when it comes to understanding, all right, there has to be operational audits. There has to be transparency when it comes to security amongst everyone in the organization. And lastly, there just needs to be more oversight, right? Somebody's home network should not be more secure than this monument that holds one of multiple pieces of the finest art in the world, right? So I hate that cargo theft happens in our space. It's something that really interests me because it has just changed the landscape so much, as we've seen over, I'd say not even the last 10 years, the last, I'd say 72 months, right? This is almost an industry within an industry. And we'll stay on this because somebody is shacking the fool right now, right? My man, the best big man in the game, Shaquille O'Neal, had his $180,000 Range Rover stolen in a transport scam. So even a celebrity as big as Shaq, and shout out to Cody for putting this in the top left corner, man. That is my favorite Shaq meme. Even if Shaq can get got, right? And he trusted that this transport actual thing was going to be valid, it wasn't, right? This must again show you about vetting, because if Shaquille O'Neal, one of the best and I'll just say richest men in the United States, he has money everywhere, multiple entities, multiple businesses, if this can happen to him, what do you think is going to happen to you if you don't properly vet the partners that you're working with each and every single day? Finally, I always told you guys I would break news for you guys. Luckily for this, there was no casualties. So I want to say that this is from Noy. This hopped on my desk about 30 minutes ago. There was an accident. This Amtrak train in San Antonio, a heavy-duty truck collided with it. Again, no fatalities reported, but the incident, again, underscores crossing risk and operational awareness. Every carrier and broker should have protocols in place when it comes to this, specifically rail infrastructure. Whenever we've talked about it previously with guests talking about rail, Ian, as well as Carrie here on the show, it's critical to train drivers, but also operators within the space when stuff like this happens. So super happy that there were no casualties, but I wanted to break that news for you all as well. So again, a jam-packed session when it came to headlines with me, but I like to make sure you guys are up to date and aware of what is happening in the space. So I appreciate you guys. And now I would like to pitch it to the president of OTR Solutions, the one and only Clayton Griffin. Clayton, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Malcolm. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you so much for being here on the show. How's your week going so far, man? We're halfway through.
Yeah, I know. It's freight never stops. So the work week kind of progresses along, but as we all know, the weekends you got freight moving too. So.
Oh yeah, it never stops, man. Well, first up, before we get into this, how was your experience at F3? We are going to talk about the fireside chat and some content from it, but overall, your thoughts about F3 here in Chattanooga, man.
It was awesome. Loved it. Chattanooga's close to us. We're just north of Atlanta, so it's a really short trip up. But there's just so much going on in our space right now. So much moving and shaking, and a lot of people doing a lot of cool things. So it's always great to spend time with people in person. I feel like COVID set us back a little bit, but being able to break bread with people, meet with people, spend some quality time in person is always a priority for us.
Could not say it better, Clayton. Nah, it definitely was an awesome event. And you recently posted about carrier survivability and its link to broker behavior. And there's a graph that caught a lot of attention that we're going to show for everyone. But for anyone who missed it specifically, can you break down what you were showing here and what stood out to you whenever you saw this data specifically, Clayton?
Yeah, so the post, I think I mentioned this at the end of my post. It was a little longer than probably I would like, but it's a work in progress to trim those things down. But essentially, it's just the dark blue line is carriers that work with OTR shortly after OTR Solutions, shortly after having received their authority, and then the kind of teal line is the rest of the FMCSA database of carriers. And so we basically just take the x-axis is when they receive their authority, and then those lines are basically the retention 12 months into them having had their authority. And then we highlighted a couple of the differences, which generally is between 15 and 25% more likely to be in business when they work with OTR versus kind of the rest of the market. And so I mentioned in the post that there were a lot of reasons for that. Generally speaking, just because I think some people view us as a liquidity solution for carriers, and that's certainly a part of what we do. But we also do a lot more kind of in the nooks and crannies of how to make these guys more competitive in the market, how to give them the tools to be successful, how to take a lot of things off their plate. And we're continuing to try to build on the suite of services that give our clients a leg up. That goes for carriers and brokers. But generally, our focus is on putting client success, client growth, client survivability at the forefront. Survivability gets a lot of talk now, just because obviously how soft the market's been over the course of the last 2 or 3 years. So it felt worth highlighting. But for the guys who are focused on growth, especially as the market picks up, we put the tools in their hand to allow them to be more successful, to add trucks responsibly where they can, to grow their footprint where they can. On both the carrier and the broker side of the house.
Very well said, Clayton. Now, the chart specifically also showed, right, that working with OTR carriers specifically are 20% more likely to stay in business after 12 months. What's driving this difference? And also, why should brokers specifically be paying attention to that number?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You guys have been talking a lot over the course of the last week about this, the ATA and the driver shortage narrative, if you will. I think it's more important now than ever for brokers to be focused on making really good relationships with good carriers. And so we feel we do a ton of underwriting on our clients on the front end of the relationship. And we're also monitoring these guys' behavior on a regular basis, right? How fast are they growing? Do we have what we need to feel comfortable continuing to fund them on the invoices that they're running? We're verifying every single invoice. We launched Truly Instant Funding actually today, which looks at every single document down to the macro data level and analyzes whether or not we think it's legitimate, whether we think there's anything that might be out of the ordinary, which is just an extension of kind of the fraud protection layer that a broker maybe doesn't have integrated into how they're doing business. And so generally, we have a ton of data, and just working with OTR is somewhat self-fulfilling when it comes to the quality of the carrier. And so putting these carriers in front of brokers and trying to make that relationship and bridge the gap and give brokers access to this portion of the marketplace that is traditionally pretty difficult to access, right? The only way you're going to access it is to toss a line out, post a load on one of the load boards potentially. You get a ton of people rushing in saying, hey, I want the load. And then you have to rely on the infrastructure you have to underwrite that capacity. So we're trying to find ways to proactively put this good capacity in front of our brokerage partners so that they're in a better position, obviously, to find reliable relationships that they can build, that they can feel really good about leaning into. And then from the carrier side, obviously, we want to matchmake them with the good brokerage relationships that we have. And so proactively saying, hey, these carriers are a good fit for your network, and these brokers are a good fit for you guys to run with and find freight is becoming more and more a priority for us.
Clayton, at F3, you mentioned OTR's carrier platform is measured by survivability, right? And you've kind of spoke to
Yep.
that already on today's interview. But then also, the broker platform is measured by growth. So you have kind of these two pillars. How do these two kind of tie together when it comes to real world partnerships? What does that look like?
Yeah, so speaking about the broker side specifically, because we've been talking about carriers quite a bit,
Yeah,
every broker you talk to, even though finding capacity isn't, front of their mind, finding net new capacity isn't front of their mind just because the market's pretty soft right now,
right.
they're still focused on building durable, reliable, consistent carrier relationships. And so being able to proactively present this capacity that is working with our platform on the carrier side of the house is a way that we are enabling brokers that are working with us on the broker side of the house to, when they go to grow and really ramp up and they want to go pursue new customer relationships and they want to open new offices, they feel confident that they're going to be able to source the capacity and reliable, right? You mentioned earlier on the show that the capacity that you're putting on this freight that you're moving for your customers is an extension of you. It's
It
an
is
extension of your business. It's an
100%.
extension of your ability to service that customer. And so we want to make ourselves an extension of that broker's operation. We want to give them the tools to be successful. And we have a ton of data from our carrier side that gives us the ability to enable those brokers to be smarter in how they source capacity, feel more confident in how they're sourcing that capacity, that's not going to be fraudulent, that it's not going to be somebody who is going to run off with their load or provide poor performance. And so bridging the gaps between the two platforms, I think there is a ton that can be gained kind of from bridging that gap.
When brokers, and let's stay on the theme of brokers because you're talking to a former one. I'll always be one at heart.
Yeah.
When brokers are making decisions specifically about payment terms, right? Whether it's net 30, 90, 120, so on and so forth, communication, load consistency. How do these choices impact carrier stability and reliability down the line? I think I know the answer, but I want you to really kind of drive this home for our listeners today.
You mean specifically related to payments or just generally how they're dealing
I would
with
say
carriers?
generally. I mean, they're separate entities, but of course, it's like what did these things look like? I'd say separately.
Yeah, I think everybody is very focused in the brokerage community, certainly with trying to find the best capacity at the best price. And I think being able to do that in a way where you are achieving both without sacrificing one or the other is what really critically sets apart the guys who are extraordinarily successful and the guys who maybe make concessions on one or the other, right? They can find really cheap capacity, but it's not going to provide them with the level of service that they need to satisfy their customers' demands. Or they might be able to find, good capacity, but it's not necessarily at a competitive market price. From a payment terms perspective, we obviously have a really good indication of the 7,000 to 10,000 freight brokers that we're working with on our carrier side of the house. We have great relationships with the brokerage, universe, and we're always trying to find ways to enable those guys to give them tools to be successful. Cash flow is a big part of the equation for growth for both brokers and carriers. And it's not always a bad thing, right? It's a working capital business, logistics, freight brokerage, and kind of trucking. And so a lot of these situations, if you find good operators that understand that when you're growing, you're going to need working capital. It's very hard to grow without a partner that can kind of fill that gap for you. The times when folks get in trouble is when they don't really have an understanding of that and they maybe outstrip their skis when the unit economics of the business they're doing are not going to support kind of the long-term ambitions they have.
That's some great stuff, Clayton. I saw this note from my producer in the back. There's a Georgia poster behind you, and he said, "Go Dogs." So he wanted me to share that message with you. I'm gonna say that one time,
Hey,
one time only. So,
I love it. I love it. Go Dogs. Yeah, we
um,
got a big stretch coming up. So
yeah, I think you guys are gonna be just fine. I could talk about that for a long time. I want to talk about trust, right? Because you guys have built a great reputation in the space, right? When it comes to trust, specifically when it comes to back office support, as well as functions and payments. To your point that you just made, the technology that you all utilize, it supports carrier health, but how specifically does it do this for long term success?
yeah, trust is critical. I think we talked about at the very beginning, right? F3 getting to break bread with people, understanding who they are on the human level, understanding what their goals and ambitions and approach are from a business level. There is so much technology. There are so many new players that have entered the space over the course of the last 5 years, and I think a lot of them are doing really cool things. I think some of them, may or may not be around. And so being able to trust that someone has good intentions, that someone is truly making decisions with client health, client growth at the forefront of their mind, which is really how we go about making decisions at OTR for both our carrier and our broker platform. And so all of our technologies are built to enable our clients to be more successful. And the way that we do that is obviously being more efficient is a huge part of that, because it allows us to devote our time and effort and mind share into doing more value add things for our clients, right? Doing the small things, as I mentioned, picking up the phone, talking to people, going and visiting people. You can't do those things if the core of your business from an operational perspective is hyper inefficient. And so we invest in technology to free us up to go and service people where they want to be serviced, how they want to be serviced. If someone wants to call us, they get a human being. If someone wants to engage with our technology, they can do so in a very, very seamless way, which ultimately reduces friction, which reduces cost for them, which allows them to move faster, which allows them to grow and feel confident about investing in their business, which is what we want. We win when our clients win, for carriers and brokers. As our carriers grow, as our brokers grow, our platform grows, and we can truly win together. It's one of my favorite things about our business is that we are so aligned with the success of our clients that it's very easy to make good long-term decisions. It keeps us honest, which for us is awesome and a really cool thing about the position that we sit in. So ultimately, we look at, is this going to have a net positive impact on our clients in the short, medium, and long term? And if we can determine that we feel like it is, then we're generally going to find a way to invest in that technology or invest in that product or service to try to provide value. And if we think that someone else does it better, or we can find a partner to align ourselves with, then we're perfectly happy going that route as well.
I love that mindset and that mentality, and you can kind of tell that in, of course, the company's reputation and what you guys are currently doing at OTR. Now, a question to follow up on that when it comes to trust is also their speed with trust. You guys are extremely efficient, but very fast and very transparent when speaking with partners all across the organization. Where specifically does that come from, and how are you guys balancing speed, but also transparency and being able just to have a proper function when it comes to balancing the two of those things?
It's interesting. I think the two are so closely related.
Yeah.
It's very hard to move fast without transparency. If you don't know where you're going, it's very hard to run fast. And so generally our mindset is, let's be open and honest. Let's be open and honest with our employees. Let's be open and honest with our clients. Let's be open and honest with our partners. Because if you're building for the long term, everything's going to shake out. The truth will come out eventually. So why invest your time and effort into something that is potentially based on falsehoods? And I think we're very transparent with, it's just the way we operate. We will tell people the truth, and we'll be very straightforward with them if we think we can do something, if we think we can't do something, if we think we're the best fit. And we'll invest in the areas where we think we're the best fit to be a really, really good, powerful partner. But I don't think you can move fast without trust. I don't think you can move fast without transparency. It's very hard to scale organizations if you don't have trust in your employees and if your employees don't have trust in you. Ultimately, you have to give people the bandwidth to make decisions. And if they can't make decisions, then decisions are going to bottleneck. And when decisions bottleneck, progress slows down, innovation creeps. And so we put a lot of trust in our employees, and we expect them to put our trust in us. And so when they put our trust in us, we're going to tell them how it is. We're going to shoot them straight. And we expect the same out of our group as well. And so we have people making, really young people that haven't been out of college much and haven't been in the professional sphere long. And we give them a lot of responsibility. And ultimately, they have the ability to make a decision. And if they make a mistake, great. You learn from it, you move on, and we can continue to move. But at least we were honest and open. At least we were thoughtful in how we approached the problem. I think when you silo those things and you keep information from people, you start to make bad decisions because you're making decisions in a vacuum without all the necessary inputs that you need to really make an informed decision. So that's generally how we approach things. It's very hard to move fast if you don't have all the inputs and if you're not listening to what your clients are saying, what your employees are saying, and you're essentially playing this game of tug of war where people have different incentives or they're not aligned to make decisions in the same way.
Clayton Griffin, president of OTR Solutions. Clayton, this has been awesome, man. I wish we had another 30 to run. This was fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on the show today, man. This was phenomenal.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Of course.
Have a good week.
You as well, brother. Clayton, I was got in the ear, go Vols. I wasn't gonna do you like that, Clayton, man. I got you. You are awesome. Again, Clayton Griffin with OTR Solutions. That was some great content, man. Definitely got a lot of bites out of that. Coming up right now is a guy that, of course, man, I've known this guy, man. We met very early on in my career. He has done so much in the space in a very short amount of time, and I think you guys are going to get a lot of value out of this, man. Simon, come on up, brother. Y'all, Simon Steadman is representing against Supermove. He is business development there. What is up, bro? How are you?
What's up, Malcolm?
What's up,
How's it
man?
going?
Hey, welcome to What the Truck, man.
Yeah.
We went from
Circle.
the hallways at a brokerage to a desk and lights and cameras, and
Yeah.
this is crazy, man.
It is. It's kind of surreal.
Surreal. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Can't complain. Life is good. How about you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I can't complain.
Yeah.
Life is good. Obviously here on the show and just trying to get my bearings. It's been a good start so far, man. We're about 20 episodes or so in since
Yeah.
I've taken the ship, and man, I'm just trying to do my thing, man.
They've got a good one. You guys picked a good
man,
one
I
with
appreciate
Malcolm
it.
here.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Well, again, Simon, thank you so much for joining me. Talk to me because you sent this across my desk, and I was like, okay, this is really dope, and I wanted people to know what's the idea behind the F50 Leadership Summit that you brought to my attention, because this is sick, man.
Yeah. So, moving is a bit of an adjacent industry to freight.
Yeah.
So appreciate you having me on as a bit of an outlier here.
Of course.
We do have some customers that do freight. It's where they're diversified and they have freight as well as their moving division. But the F50 leadership event it's really just centered around networking. So you can imagine, every industry has like the top 20%,
Right.
where, they're the whales, if you will. They're producing the most revenue, hundreds of millions, if not billions. And so the idea is to bring the execs into a room, a very small, intimate environment where there's not really any selling going on. Like we're not going to be talking about Supermove and how we help. It's more so giving them the opportunity to rub shoulders with each other, almost like a leadership forum. And, we're going to have speakers from companies like DoorDash, former Nike execs, Samsara. So a lot of these companies use Samsara, and just talking about like what's working and what's not for these companies, whether it be technology related or not. Of course, there's a big technology evolution happening right now. So, it's talking about those sorts of things, also how consumer expectations are changing A lot of people want more of a modern experience. So, anyways, it's more just to network
For sure.
and hear what's going on.
Now, Summit, what trends right now are you seeing that, all right, like, hey, obviously, bro, you've been in freight, you've done it at the highest level you could possibly do it. What things are you currently seeing right now in not only the freight market, but specifically your market that, all right, I have to be adopting this to stay ahead of this? What are you seeing right now?
Yeah. So, a lot of people are hearing about AI. There's a lot of noise around it, and that would be my answer. That's the biggest trend is AI and automation. The moving industry is very interesting, where it's about 20 years behind in terms of technology. A lot of companies that we talk to and work with, in some cases, they were using typewriters, believe it or not. And so there's definitely a digital transformation happening where not only are they getting off of paperwork, but they're also trying to adapt to what their customers want, like quicker response times, online order submit and like order forms and booking online and like more digital modern experience.
Right.
That those are the biggest trends, and I think the companies that are you know, open to that, whether they are full on embracing it, they're at least moving the needle more than the ones that aren't.
So you just talked about automation, you just talked about AI, but specifically, how do you help, I guess, companies that are stuck kind of 20 years behind?
Yeah.
How do you help them kind of get ahead of the curve when it comes to these tools that, I mean, are taking our industry to places it's never been before?
Yeah. So we recognize like that there's a lot of fear and doubt and uncertainty around. There's a lot of mystery to AI,
Yeah,
right? Like a lot of companies know that they need to at least be aware of it, but they're not sure how to apply it or even if they should. And so I think first and foremost, a digital transformation for a really large business, it could take a number of years.
for sure.
It's not going to happen overnight, of course. And so we take a little bit of a hands-on approach to implementation and phase it out. And we want to look at first what's going to create the most immediate return and the most immediate impact. In a lot of cases, that might be how can we identify areas that they may be missing out on revenue, and using AI to catch additional revenue. And maybe that's the first phase. And then maybe the next phases are, changing the IT infrastructure and the things that they've had in place for years when it comes to their internal operations. So it's, we really adopt a bit of a mutual plan in terms of aligned incentives, like time milestones around when we want to see certain events happen. That way it's like we're mitigating the doubt and the risk there, but also still getting them a return as quick as possible.
So, looking at one thing moving companies often overlook, right? It comes to tech, it comes to partnerships specifically in this space. What can happen to accelerate this? What can specifically go on that can accelerate this? Because I know it's hard, man, and kind of behind the curve. Like, what can happen when it comes to kind of forwarding this process to make it faster to get companies to where they need to go?
Yeah, I think just first and foremost, being more receptive to it. There's
Yeah,
there's a lot. I mean, it's very understandable that a lot of companies are closed off to the idea of anything to do with AI and automation. For example, like we did this marketing campaign this past summer where it was called Movers Most Wanted,
oh, I
and
love that.
yeah, it
That's
was it
so
was really
sick.
cool. It was really cool. We visited in person to their offices, showed up with a Sprinter van. It was crazy, and it was the busiest time of year for movers, which is summertime. That's when most people move,
Of course.
and so we go in and there's a lot of like mounds of paperwork in their offices, like cabinets that have had files in there probably for decades, and so I think, um, going back to what I was saying, just being more receptive to the idea of innovation in an industry that's historically more antiquated is first and foremost, I think, what's going to move the needle. And I think, once companies start seeing the impact of what it can do, then that will happen. So
Simon, bring me to the future real quick, man. All right. You've always been a forward thinker. In our time that I've known you, there's one thing you're going to do, and it's you're going to think about the future and what's happening. So, specifically, where do you see the moving industry going in the next, let's just say 5 years? Where do you see it going then?
yeah. time can only tell, but I do think that what's happening currently with AI is only the surface.
Yeah.
Like the way that companies are using it predominantly right now is to augment human efforts. Like, we don't see it necessarily replacing humans. It's more so boosting the efforts. Like, for example, a lot of companies may get calls after hours, and a lot of our tools help them catch those missed calls rather than maybe them going to voicemail. I think that's like the most basic example of how AI is going to be utilized. I think in the future it's going to be allowing them to kind of like a chat GPT kind of scenario where they can enter a prompt into their software systems and be able to see quickly at a quick glance like what is my capacity for said date, how many trucks and crews do I have available at that time, and be able to get those like real time answers. That's something currently that is on the horizon, but right now it's just servicing those missed leads, and I think that's like the top of the glacier, if you will.
Definitely. If you could give a piece of advice, right, to a moving company right now looking to kind of grow and, obviously see the success that Supermove has, and what would that be? What would that piece of advice be?
Yeah, I think, well, all this to say is that, the tool is not the answer. I think that it certainly is going to help you with whatever challenges that you are trying to solve. But my advice would be to like take a little bit of an introspective point of view and look internally at the challenges that your business is facing. Like, are there any areas that you're spending too much time? Are there any areas that's creating friction in your processes? And start there. Like, there's a lot of shiny objects and there's a lot of noise. If you're on LinkedIn in any way, shape, or form, then this to be true. But a lot of companies will try to chase just the latest and greatest like AI tool and try to solve a problem that maybe doesn't even exist in their current business. I would say start with your business and see what your challenges are and the problems that are maybe preventing you from scaling or from growing or a bit expensive, and then let that be the start of your search to whatever tool or platform that you're trying to solve.
Where can our listeners find more information about you, about Supermove, as well as the F50 Leadership Summit? Because that sounds amazing, man. I can't even lie to you.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. Our website is supermove.com. So lots of information there. I believe that we will have information coming out about the F50 Leadership Summit.
Nice.
But it is going to be really exciting. I've never been a part of something where literally executives of companies that are already busy are coming to an event to rub shoulders with other executives of the top tier companies in an industry and talk about how to change it and innovate it. So it's really cool. We're looking forward to the transformation it's going to bring.
Simon Steadman with Supermove, my brother, my hallway buddy, man. I
Yeah.
appreciate you, dog, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. This
Of
is really
course.
cool.
Nah, this is awesome, man, and you are too. And want to give a special shout out to, of course, our guests that have happened all week, man. And you guys are in the 2-minute drill with me officially. 2-minute offense. We're on the road again. The road ahead is here. Looking at Friday's episode, man, I have a nice duo. Veer Junja, the co-founder of Fleetline, is going to be joining me, as well as, this guy is going to be a treat. I have a call with him later on. Greg Braun, the CRO at C3 Solutions, is going to be joining the show as well for a fantastic Friday edition of What the Truck. Make sure, if you're not, like, subscribe, follow, tweet, mail, call, whatever you got to do to get here on What the Truck. Make it happen. It's another episode, such a good one. Make sure you guys don't go anywhere. More What the Truck on Friday. I'm your host, Malcolm Harris. As always, a salute and a peace. I'm out.